Ready for it.
Thrilled for it.
Presenting Franks with Turbo Booster Jet Engine.
Nexa.
RCB crush the Punjab Kings. RCB storm into the final of IPL 2025. Their fourth final. This looks like their season. They have brushed aside the table toppers in 24.1 overs in this first qualifier. 10-over chase completed. Rajat Patidar fittingly it's the sixth to take this team into the final in his first season as captain on a night where everything went their way. We unpack the Punjab Kings capitulation in the first half and the RCB story, which is now nearly there. They're in the final, folks. This is Nexa Presents. ESPN again for timeout in the fine company of Varun, Tom Moody, Dustin Silgardo. It was on expected lines. After the first innings, pretty much, Tom, decided the fate of this game. But credit to RCB.
Yeah, certainly was. And credit to RCB and particularly the way they chased this down, because they could have tiptoed their way to that total, but I think they had the right personnel out there in Phil Salt, and he's only got one speed, and that's overdrive. And that's exactly what was required, was someone just to sort of just take the pressure out of the game. Yes, there was moments where the ball was swinging and there was a little bit of, fishing outside of off stump, but at the end of the day, when you've only got 101 on the board, it's very hard for the bowlers to get you back into the contest.
Is that 2 finals in 2 seasons for Phil Salt?
Yeah, it is. and he's been prolific in both those build-ups, with KKR, obviously, him and Narayan playing a huge role. And then this year, even though him and Kohli haven't batted for the whole IPL together because he was injured in between, they're still featuring on the top 5 partnerships overall, actually. So that's brilliant from Phil Salt.
There was a moment when Kyle Jamieson was getting the ball to move, and we thought, yep, there's something about this Mullapur surface today which was offering fast bowlers like yourselves some assistance, if not more.
2 overs, actually. But the thing is, especially in a total like this, and Punjab know it better than anybody else because they've defended the smallest total, you've got to bowl in partnerships. From the other end, sadly, Ashdeep wasn't on today. Yeah. He was not just with his execution, but with his plans. You would understand as a fast bowler, somebody getting driven down the ground for 4 or through covers. But when you're trying a slower bouncer on a wicket like this, it's just not the ball, especially in the power play on a wicket like this, when you've got that many on the board.
You got something on the surface today?
Yeah, the Hawkeye numbers actually say the ball did more in the second innings than the first. It was 1.7 degrees swing in the power play in the second innings compared to the first. I think the first innings was 3 centimeters more bounce. Second innings was 5 centimeters. This is more bounce than the average Mulampur surfaces before today. But yeah, maybe just 155, 160, it could have been a game, Tom.
Yeah, translate that, Thomas, for novices like myself.
I'll translate that into layman's terms, and that is the ball did swing more in the second innings, but that was because Kyle Jamieson was sitting it up to try to really swing the ball, and it did bounce more is because he's a foot taller than Boovy.
But I guess Dustin's point is that today we saw more movement than on an average at this venue. And the minute in the modern day T20 game where teams like to set up aggressively like Punjab Kings, the minute there is something, this is now almost has to be accepted as a possibility. Teams will and can collapse.
Yeah, look, again, in the build-up for this contest, one of the things we have talked about on this wonderful red couch has been adjusting to the surface and the conditions. And to me, that is one of the most critical points coming to a venue that you're a little bit unsure about. It's not like you're going to get exactly what you know every single time. They went in there not knowing whether it's going to seam, swing or spin or be flat, be a 200 plus. So surely you set up your game plan and your mindset around absorbing information as quick as possible and then adjusting your game accordingly. And that's basically where Punjab has just completely blown up, is that they didn't at all. And it seemed like that with the ball as well. As you mentioned, Ashdeep, like what was he thinking? Halfway down to Kohli to get him off the mark. Oh, thank you. That's 4. I'll take that.
100%.
It's like on a surface where we've seen it seam, we've seen it swing. Surely you'd be thinking, I'm going to try to hit him in the front pad here, LBW early.
Yeah.
Just to give a very relatable example, Shreyas Iyer's dismissal. First ball beat, second ball he swings and gets out. Mayank, on the other hand, he struggled, but he didn't offer a shot. So that just got him through that over. Yes, he did not go on to score a 50 or something like that, but it's just two different approaches on a wicket like this.
Of course, when you're chasing 105 versus
exactly.
when you're setting. We spoke a lot about Punjab's inability to respect the conditions, like Tom said, sit in the game, understand that there is something happening in this ball here, we need maybe 150, 160, or we need to settle things here, we can't just keep going hard. But on the evidence of what you've said on the bowling, now since we spoke so much of Punjab at the halfway stage, let's talk RCB's bowlers. They also perhaps came into this game not necessarily knowing what the surface is offering. It's so easy for somebody to bowl that Arshdeep type over where you're off. Let's try a bouncer. Let's try the slow ball. They just bowled exactly how you needed to bowl today.
Experience, right? Bhuvi, most experienced, one of the most experienced bowlers in the IPLs, one of the top bowlers all time in the IPLs. Then you got Hazelwood and Yash Dayal can just feed off them. Also, if you remember in the 6th over, Suyash was going to bowl. That's when they just bailed out and made Yash Dayal bowl another over and he got a wicket. So it was good captaincy as well. Because in the previous game, when there was swing, Tushara was getting swing, they got on Kunal from the other end.
Yeah.
So it was good, intelligent captaincy, kept the fast bowlers on for very long and that resulted in wickets.
Yeah, I mean, Hazelwood's return, RCB would have been already feeling like, wow, we've got so much more of a chance that he's back. But what a buy, what an addition to this team.
And he would have absolutely welcomed the surface he's bowling on, because if you asked him what surface would you like for your comeback game, thank you very much. That's perfect, because it's got bounce, it's got a little bit of movement, you know, and he just knows that he hits that dinner plate just about at that 7 metre mark over the top of off stump or just outside. You know, good luck.
Have you got anything more to try and better understand Punjab's approach from what we discussed earlier? If you want, I'd like you to bring up those aggressive shots versus number of wickets numbers again, since we're recapping.
Yeah, I think it was about, after the second wicket fell, it was about 23 aggressive shots for 7 wickets. As Varun said, that's slightly skewed because there were a few more defensive shots played later in the innings. I think there was a time in the innings where the aggressive shot percentage was closer to 45-50, which is probably too much on a pitch like this. You know, you're attacking almost every second ball. But yeah, I mean, you know, back on Varun's point on the captaincy, they also gave Yash Dayal the second over to Priyan Sharia, where a lot of us thought Hazelwood would bowl that over. And then as soon as Shreyas is in, they didn't stick with Yash, even though he had got the wicket. They said, okay, this is the matchup, gave Hazelwood the ball straight away. And then even, I mean, I remember at one point they were 8 down and he brought on Romario Shepherd, and I was thinking, okay, why not just Bhuvi or Hazelwood to close this out? But it was one of those days where everything Patidar did work, because even Shepherd ended up getting a wicket.
Yeah, yep. That they even had to pick themselves up with less time, 24 hours. We brought up the point after the Lucknow game. Punjab had an extra day, which can be of value in these sorts of things. So how impressive overall is the entire RCB performance level from the last game in Lucknow to then refocus, get your bowling plans, get your tactics right in a qualifier.
Yeah, look, it was a clinical performance, and yes, they certainly had the harder journey to this game, but I can't help but feel that the inclusion of Hazelwood just elevates that whole team, and we've seen exactly why. And this is not just a one-off for him this year. For RCB, he's been very central to their strength, which has been historically their weakness, which is their bowling. He has put some real backbone into that bowling.
Good toss today?
Yeah, I think so. You know, at the end of the day, Punjab made an absolute pig's ear of their first innings, and you know they could, if they made the assessments that we're talking about and made the adjustments, they should have got to that 160, 170 mark, and it would have been a competitive game then, because it just gives the bowlers half a chance.
Yeah. By pig's ear, of course, you mean mess.
Yes.
It's very messy. I wanted to bring up Shreyas Iyer's comments and then carry the conversation on. A day to forget, but we have to go to the drawing board. We were befuddled and lost a lot of wickets. There's your word. Dustin keeps talking about how he likes to... Shreyas Iyer really brings in some very nice words in these things. Befuddled and lost a lot of wickets. Something to go back and study. Not doubting on my decisions in terms of planning. Outside of the ground, it was on point. Couldn't execute. Can't blame our bowlers. Such a low total. Got to work on our batting on this wicket. In all the games here, there's been variable bounce. I can't give such reasons because we are professionals and we have to live up with it. We've lost the battle, but not the war. Now, what do you sense is their greatest learning from today? They still have another chance. And Dustin, you brought up the point earlier. It's so important for a team like Punjab because of this high aggressive style of cricket they play to finish in the top 2 because you have the insurance of qualifying number 2. Will this result hit them, make them start doubting their approach? Do you sense they'll come back smarter in Ahmedabad?
I think they have to just assess conditions. Again, Ahmedabad is not going to be a wicket like this. It's going to be a very different wicket. So they'll have to stay neutral, not get too overawed by what's happened today, but also assess conditions, assess situations in the game, more importantly than anything else, which they haven't done today, and then go into that game or be in that game rather.
Coach talk for Punjab?
Sorry?
Coach talk for Punjab after a game like this?
Yeah, look, I think at the end of the day, you've got to move on as quick as possible because what's happened there tonight is not relevant to what's going to happen in their next opportunity.
Yep.
So the quicker they reset and get themselves back into the headspace that they have been all season, the better. Because, they've clearly, as the captain has said, they haven't made, smart moves around, playing in this contest. Yeah, learn from it, but move on very quickly.
I know you've said that often, and I understand that line to not dwell on it, but there is some reflection needed. You could find yourself in a situation like this again. What if there is some assistance? What if your uncapped openers get out early?
Yeah, look, everyone's approach would be different as from a coaching perspective, but my take on it would be to do that in not a group setting. That would be very much on an individual basis and not immediately after the game. It would be at a time where the player has had an opportunity to reflect themselves, and they will do, and some reflect too harshly, so you need to bring them back after they've had that chance to reflect. But just discuss, let's say Ayer's decision, his shot, again, just in a disarming conversation, how would you approach that differently? If you had your time again, and just at least you connect with the player so he knows that you're aware that it wasn't quite what was expected and he also accepts it.
Okay, I think there's an RCB story here. We have discussed Punjab's capitulation, what led to it, the choice of shots, Shreyas, Shashank, all that on our mid show, and I do urge you to watch it. It was a brilliant chat with Tom and Varun and Dustin. But what a story this is. Team reset, new captain. They have, in many ways, rebranded RCB this season. I think it's better to have this chat now because the final can go either way. They are favourites with history on their side, finishing top 2 and all that. But let's just focus on what a great season this has been for RCB and what you attribute that to.
I think, we discussed this in the pre-show. At the end of the day, you've got to attribute it to 8 players being man of the match throughout the season. Because RCB have always been dominated by a few players, few big batters, I would say, who did a bulk of the lifting. But there was always talks about, after Virat Kohli, who's the highest run scorer. Till last year, it was Rahul Dravid. Okay, so this year that has changed. Phil Salt has come in. He's played a really big hand. Devdutt Padikkal was instrumental in the first half. Now you've got somebody like Jitesh standing up. Rajat Patidar is looking good, even from last game, though he didn't get too many runs. Soft dismissal in point, but he's looking good. So there are signs, and then Tim David comes in, plays brilliantly. Romario Shepherd, what an innings! So if you actually think about it, so many moments from RCB straight away comes to mind that everybody's chipped in at different times when they were down and out. Obviously, Josh Hazelwood, huge addition. Bhuvi again today, brilliant. So it's just a story of guys stepping up more than they have stepped up before. Krunal Pandya and Suyash, again, before the season we were talking about their spin. You know what, RCB doesn't have the best spin attack, but their spinners have stood up better than anybody else.
Yeah, I think their squad, and particularly their playing 11 or 12 that they've gone with throughout the whole season, has been the big difference between previous years is that it's a better balanced side, far better balanced side. It's not top heavy. There's opportunities for other players to have an impact in the game, where previously you look at RCB and it was always you look at the top 3 and then you're concerned about what follows that. But you look at their side now, it's just got a better balance to it, and their bowling attack, aside from the fact that they don't have any sort of real mystery to their spin, but their spin have dovetailed nicely into the the hard work that the pace bowlers have done, and that they have done a good job. The likes of Hazelwood, Bhuvi, and Yashdale have all had their moments to create the opening for them to play their game. You know, Suresh tonight, for instance, you know, picking up 3 for, but that was on the back of the hard work. You know, that wasn't because he bowled like a magician.
Yeah.
He came on when they were 5 down, you know, or 4 down, and you know, so he not taking anything away from his performance, but it's a lot harder to be bowling at that stage against it being none for 100.
On the flip side, it's not like he bowled bad balls.
No.
That Stoinis could get under. That
the pressure wasn't there though.
Yeah, he got
so
Shashank.
the pressure, you haven't got the batsman squeezing the glue out of the bat handle, trying to hit you out of the ground every ball because you know they're going at 11 and over.
Yeah, his celebrations though struck me as someone who still felt like, oh, perhaps there was a conversation of whether I'm not bowling well in the last 2 games.
Yeah,
there
he was
some of
trying to prove a point. But on the other hand, RCB was setting up, especially in their auction, for a team like before. Because if they had gotten Venki Iyer, I think we were
that's a
talking
very good
about
point.
it. If they had gotten Venki Iyer, they wouldn't have got a lot of these players who performed really well. Because 23 crores would have gone straight away there, and they wouldn't have the resources to pick such a balanced side. So it's been a blessing in disguise for them.
Thankfully, there was a day 2 of the auction.
Yeah,
that's where they built their squad.
I actually kind of remember Varun was building the 11s, weren't you, during the auction, I think, on broadcast. And about midway through day 1, I think you were getting very stressed about RCB, saying like they've not got anybody. Because there was a long list of players that they actually bid for. I had put it down, but it was Stark, Rabada, Miller. They had bid for a bunch of players and not got them. Right. And then they hit the panic button and went big for Venki Iyer because they had pulled out early. They even put in bids for Pant, Rahul, but they hadn't gone above 10, 11. Then they hit the panic button and went up to 23.5 for Venki Iyer. Didn't get him. But then I think they actually got to do what they probably originally planned, which is to kind of moneyball it a bit and get, you know, players for 11 crore, 11 crore. Because apart from Kohli, there's nobody on more than on 12 crore.
I think that was plan B.
Yeah,
I think they found themselves in plan B. And in that auction environment, that's exactly how it can turn out. You can end up with plan D, you know, in some cases, because the dynamic of the auction is so unpredictable. And, you know, you nearly get sucked in, which they did, to the point of way overpaying for someone, which then compromises the balance of the whole squad.
Yeah, I guess this, if you can agree with, I want to run this by you, Tom, that perhaps after the big auctions, it's a lesson that perhaps in the year after the big auction, the auction table actually is the least reliable. While it's relevant, we can go back to it. GT's win in 2022 after the big auction was something which was hard to foresee. Even this season, I think we did find Sunrisers as non-making to the playoffs, and you know, a lot of stories that we thought were solid in the auction. So I guess you still have to get this group working. You still have to get the best out of a Padikkal. Tim David was a budget by Jitesh Sharma. For that matter, even Jacob Bethel. You found ways to get, shall I say, a plan B group to work.
Tom,
So
I mean,
is that credit to Patidar, to the management, to Andy Flower? The direction they went with, that they, after Faf was released, Siraj was released, they made some calls there which were gambles. Paid off.
Yeah.
Do you think in the auction, like as a coach who picks a team, it's also important to pick a lot of quality Indian players who have a point to prove? Because you just get that much more out of them. And I think RCB has a lot of Indian players who have a point to prove. Kunal Pandya had a very on and off kind of season, not been in favour with the Indian team for a long time now. Bhuvi feels he's treated unfair. Jitesh trying to make a mark. Yes, they are on the brink of
Players with a lot to play for. More
it's a good point. You know, there is the temptation to go for your superstars for obvious reasons, because there's the commercial side of it along with the performance on the field. But RCB don't need to do that because they've got Kohli.
Yeah.
So let's build something around someone that ticks all those boxes, not only performance on the field, but commercially he is your number one brand.
Yeah.
And then let's just build, as you say, quality players that have just fallen away a little bit from time to time, or as you say, have, you know, had a bit of a shock and missed out on selection of a particular tour, and they think, well, I'll show you.
Yeah. Actually, you were bringing up GT 2022, Raunak. I actually think there are quite a few parallels between the GT side of 22, 23 and this one, because again, GT had a lot of experienced Indian players who were kind of having middling IPL careers. You know, there was a Mohit Sharma's, Vijay Shankar, even Shami, before he was at GT, he wasn't that kind of gun power play bowler that he became at GT. He, of course,
David
was
Miller.
very good. Yeah, David Miller. So there were a lot of these guys who, as Varun said, had a point to prove. And GT got the best out of them. Tewatia was another. And RCB this season, I mean, even when you think about, like a Tim David, for example, when you actually go back and look at his numbers, they're great. But somehow, because maybe Mumbai Indians hadn't done that well the past 3 years, I don't think people were thinking about Tim David as this gun player. But then RCB bring him in, and in this lineup, he stands out maybe more than Mumbai
They
Indians.
used him better as
They
well,
used
better
him
than how
better.
RR used Hetmeyer or KKR used Russell, so there's that.
Yeah.
So the other part is the selection, which we've talked about. The other part to it, which is probably, I think, the most important part, particularly in franchise cricket, is creating a culture where everyone feels like they belong. You know, whether it's your most experienced in Kohli or your most least experienced, they all are there together on the same page and treated pretty much the same. So you've got to give credit to the management and the leadership at RCB by creating that environment, particularly on the back of their last year's experience where they had an absolute shocker in the first half, but they, turned their, and I think that was the beginning of building a new culture at RCB.
I think this is a big story also for Rajat Patidar. To captain this franchise with the expectation, the fan base, to captain Kohli, he's been tactically on point. His form perhaps dipped a little bit in the last few games, but he's been exceptional at the start, which is perhaps the harder part. They beat KKR in the opening game, defending champions, went on to beat CSK and MI. CSK, they had never conquered those things. These are things that they've never done before, and Patidar seems to have almost in one season become, if just filled into the role of RCB captain.
Absolutely, he's done a great job, and especially what even more highlights your point is when he was not there, there were some very not so smart decisions taken. So the moment he comes back in, he just makes sure that fast bowlers are on till as long as possible, actually pulls out a spinner, makes a fast bowler bowl. So it just shows that he's actively captaining. It's not like he's a captain on the sidelines. He's actually taking some decisions, which is brilliant. And we've all known for a long time that in the domestic circuit, at least, that Patidar is one of the most calm, cool customers. Not a man of too many words, but I think he sets an example by the way he does things. Also with his dip in form, it's also got to do with his hand because he had a proper injury on his hand. Sometimes I'm not trying to make an excuse for him, but sometimes these things do play in for a batsman. And now when he's come back in to field, that just shows his hand is a lot better.
Yeah, and I would argue it's even more impressive for a captain to be so successful as a captain in a season where they're not having a 400, 500 run season, right, Tom? Because then, when you're doing really well with the bat, sometimes it becomes easier to captain. When you're not necessarily the highest run scorer for your team, it's even more impressive that he's not let that get into his head at all. He's still doing his job as a leader perfectly.
Well, it tells you that his focus is around his leadership and making sure that's on point. Obviously, he wants to score runs every single time he walks out to bat, but he's got the bigger picture in mind, which is what you want your leader to have.
Yeah, it's not like his strike rate dipped and Kohli just banked another 600 run season like that. So Salt and Kohli, we've spoken of many times. Salt, in fact, has spoken at the end of this game and said perhaps the lack of time between getting to Lucknow and here did us a favour. We didn't have time to think about this game, qualifier number one. Do you sense that's a relevant point?
Yeah, absolutely. That can be one of the real positives. And on the flip side for RCB, now they've got so much time to think before the final. So, they're thinking they're coming off this hot win. Suddenly now I've got to wait, who are we playing? And, gosh, look at our history, what we've done in our history. We've missed out this is so much. So suddenly the pressure up to the final.
What happened in their history, Thomas?
Yeah, I don't really know, but yeah, they haven't got a trophy yet.
Okay, I want to take some comments.
Just quickly, what would these next 72 hours look like for RCB if you were head coach, Tom? What would you be? Would there be a day off? Would there be optional training? What would be the next 72 hours?
Of course, they fly to Ahmedabad tomorrow with Punjab.
Yeah, look, I think certainly in the next 24 hours there'll be very little contact to be focused on recovery. So you'd hand over to your physio and strength and conditioning and all your massage therapists, getting all your players right, and then probably reset. I don't think there's any need to train the following day. Probably a get-together, whether it's an informal get-together, maybe a fun game, whatever it
Some
might
nice
be.
golf courses in Ahmedabad.
Yeah, maybe a round of golf for those that play golf. Again, taking yourself away as much as possible from the game and the focus of the final, because that's my point. If they start to try to manifest what may happen, you know, they'll be burnt out before the toss.
A dedicated security person for Josh Hazelwood's shoulder, I would think.
Yeah.
With an armed guard.
Don't worry, Cricket Australia have got them there.
Yeah, two there, two from the franchise, and a dedicated masseuse, just making sure the shoulder's nicely rubbed off with some ice. Just make sure that's taken care of.
They've got to give the RCB fans some comfort, they've got the same physio who fixed Javagal Srinath's shoulder and Anil Kumble's shoulder in the form of Evan Speechley. He's been their physio for the longest time. So he's
Wonderful.
a shoulder specialist.
I'm glad you brought up good old Evan Speechley. Gets a mention here. I'm sure we'll talk about good old Andy Flower as well. Why don't we save him for the day of the final? Let's take some comments from you lot, shall we? Now, quite a few of you seem to be running with the theme of this was not a surface fitting for a playoff. Right, that can be the fan sentiment at times. It tends to be when a team gets blown away for 101 and you think, oh my God, what kind of surface was this? So let's get a verdict.
Yeah, look, I'd rather a surface like this than a surface that you get 250 or 240. You know, I still believe this is about a 170 surface. I just felt Punjab just absolutely imploded and, you know, we're nowhere near it.
So they made this surface look worse than it was.
100%. I've been saying that since the mid-show. It wasn't like it was hooping around corners. It was a surface where the bowlers were on, but in a game of cricket, the bowlers sometimes have to, they're there to play. I think fans forget that it's only a batter's game, but a bowler also has to come into the game and take advantage of situations and conditions like this.
Phil Salt, 56 off 27.
Yeah. Makes a point.
And there was more movement in the second innings than the first innings.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been curious to see how, if RCB batted first, whether a Kohli would have shown the way of, you know, right, boys, this is 160, 170.
I would have loved to have seen that.
Yeah.
That would have been fun.
Dustin, anything on the surface since you dug out all those extraordinary numbers?
The Hawkeye numbers show that it's not like it was an unplayable surface. It was slightly more seam, a little bit more bounce than the usual Muladpur surfaces. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't like there was, it was unplayable.
High Skeptic says this is at least the third time that Punjab have bungled up conditions and getting their personnel, well, batting order and personnel, we brought up the point of stoyness, but I think shot selection more important. And you rightly recalled at least 2 games before this, where the ultra-aggressive approach has bit them, but they got away.
Yeah, they got away. I mean, again, the surface there was flatter, and the way Nehal Vadera batted, I mean, he took down also the right bowlers. I think today they maybe thought that Suyash was the guy to go after. And that was the issue. And then they didn't pick the Googly at all. I think were all Suyash's.
Yeah, and the other game was the Priyansh Arya 100 game, where they just kept hitting themselves out of trouble. So they feel like, oh, this is our way. This is the reference point we have when we're in trouble. Just keep going.
But you can do that on a better surface.
That you couldn't do today.
Yeah, and that's what they didn't do. It's interesting because, you know, tonight brought back flashes of the very first year of the IPL for me when I was coaching Punjab. And we cruised through the main body of the tournament, and this was when you didn't have a second chance. It was just semi-final and then final. So I think Rajasthan were top, we were second, just in behind them. So we had a really good season. We batted exceptionally well throughout the whole season, a bit like Punjab this year.
Yeah.
Got to the semi-final against Chennai. I think we were 4 for 30 at the end of power play, and we hadn't lost any more. We'd only lost 2 wickets, I think, on 2 or 3 occasions in the power play. The rest of it either none or one. Throughout the whole season, blew up in the semi-final. Bang, gone, chances gone.
Yeah, shame. Semi-finals time, the playoffs would have been different territory.
Yeah, I've got over it.
Excellent. Yeah, it's not like you remembered every detail. Scary, actually, how much detail he has. Good old Tom Moody. He's an ocean of knowledge.
Yeah, you remember the losses more than the wins, I think.
There's one worse than that. Against Chennai as well.
I still remember Sean Marsh having such an outstanding season.
What a season.
Wow.
Good old sauce.
All right, what else do we have? Paridar's captaincy, Sunrisers fan says, Paridar's captaincy, the bowling changes, that was missing from Jitesh in the last couple of games. Varun's made that point. Such a big inclusion, even though he might have had quiet contributions today. So,
100%. I mean, start of the game, that was my main concern, that if Jitesh is captaining or Rajat, not because Jitesh is not a good captain, but it's hard for a youngster to just step in business end of the tournament and carry a big team like RCB.
Lawrence John has a nice question to Tom. Was there a case for Punjab to continue to go hard because they know that they are in qualifier 1? So even if it doesn't go well today, you have qualifier 2.
No. No, that's what they tried to do. That's exactly what they do and got bowled out for 100.
Is the question, should they have gone harder or was this okay? I don't
I
understand.
mean, I think what he's trying to say is that even if there was a case to change the tempo of play and reassess, if this was the eliminator or if this was the second qualifier where really your tournament life is on the line, maybe you try that approach. But for them, given this hitting their way out of trouble is work, let's just keep going. Maybe we'll put some pressure on the bowlers. Maybe 1 or 2 of our batters will get away.
Yeah, no, don't buy that because there's a third factor, which is the pitch. And if the pitch is not, if the pitch is not allowing you to play that brand, why try to do it? Because you know that the odds are massively against you, which was proven today.
Also, when you go into a cricket game, you don't think about the next cricket game.
Yeah, but I guess the only thing
I'd
add to both of that is, do you have the personnel?
For what?
To play third gear if need be.
They do have the personnel.
Right.
I mean, Mayank is
Punjab.
Punjab. Shreyas Iyer has played Test cricket. Josh English
and one day cricket.
Josh English is
you brought up the point.
Player.
Exactly. So there are so many batsmen, and it's not like they have to play a Rahul Dravid defense. They have to. I mean, this is cricket at the end of the day. You can nudge it about for a single, show different intent, try to build that innings, and then go big towards the end.
You brought up the point that Shashank Singh can play like that. He can accumulate in the middle and go big at the death. Nehal Vadera has that game as well. It's not like he's just like a baseball player or whatever. So
baseball player.
I mean, he's not just swinging for the fences every ball. He's got regular cricket shots.
Right. I think a lot of the viewers are agreeing with the Plan B comment on the auction, saying Plan B's worked exceptionally well.
Which is fine as well. That's absolutely fine because they're not the only team that would have had to make those adjustments in the auction and go for Plan B or C.
Yeah, I think with your auction experience, many times, rarely does Plan A happen at an auction.
The most unpredictable things happen, and which happened again in this auction.
Right.
And they were smart enough to pivot and commit to Plan B and get it right.
Yeah.
Okay, question to Varun. Who would you support if it's an RCB GT final? Tell us honestly, Varun, don't be diplomatic.
I will support, I'm going to upset a lot of my GT friends, but I will support RCB because GT have won it once. RCB have come so close, not won it. I think RCB deserves to win one title, at least.
Okay. There you go.
RCB
then.
also have more people watching this show, so that
No. It's not that bad, but RCB, man, they played really good cricket this year. Last year as well, their fans thought, oh, this is the year. They suddenly accelerated out of nowhere. We're meant to win the title. They lose the first eliminator. But this year, they're in the finals. I really hope they win this year.
All right. And on that note, let's head to rapid fire review. I can inform you guys, it came through one of our dear colleagues, Yash Jha, who always finds these unique stats and numbers. Today is the 29th of May. Exactly 9 years to this day that SRH won the IPL final in 2016, beating RCB.
I can still remember Ben Cutting hitting those sixes behind square. I'll never forget them.
The one out of the ground?
Yeah.
I do remember that one.
Yeah.
Good, yeah, we just saw good old AB de Villiers walk in today in our studios. So he had fond memories of seeing Tom on this day. Varun Aaron was in the RCB squad as well. But they have changed their fortunes on the 29th of May. Well done, RCB. You are through to the final. And you await now what happens in the next 2 playoffs. MIGT tomorrow and then the winner of that against Punjab Kings in qualifier 2. Rapid fire review. Gentlemen, you know how this works. Let's go. Tom, were Punjab's batters overawed by the occasion or outplayed by the class of the bowling?
I think a bit of both. I think the occasion, obviously, for a lot of the uncapped players certainly muddled their thinking, but their approach and their lack of ability to adjust to the conditions that are on offer was quite telling.
Okay, Varun, what was the most impressive aspect of the collective bowling display of RCB?
I think they stuck to their plans, even though the batsmen were playing attacking shots. And generally, batsmen do try and play over-attacking shots to get you off your plans. They stuck to their plans. Prime example being Bhuvi, got bumped for two fours, and then still stuck to his plan and got perhaps some run out. So I think sticking to their plans was key on a surface like this.
Okay, Dustin, all yours this one. Is Phil Salt the biggest point of difference in RCB's fortunes this year?
They had a very good opener last year in Faf du Plessis, and I think, as Tom, I think that it's the entire collective that's got them here this season.
Okay, back to you, Tom. Back after a month almost, could Josh Hazlewood have dreamt of better conditions to bowl in? Why was he so effective?
Well, he couldn't have dreamt of better conditions. They were ideal for him, or anyone that can bowl that hard length consistently. And yeah, he'd be absolutely thrilled to get off to such a good start after having that break and having to travel back to India.
Back to you, Varun. Now, 3 days to brush aside this bruising defeat for Punjab. Would they have a preference of which team they'd meet in qualifier 2?
For starters, they shouldn't be thinking about that, because if, like Tom was saying, the anticipation build-up actually is very taxing on your brain. They should just try to be as chill as possible. Whoever comes to the final, they have absolutely no control over that. Whoever comes, they just have to play their A game. But just going by everything, I just feel it's going to be GT.
Okay, Tom, back to you. What are you telling the team as Punjab coach, if you were in that position, to regroup for that second qualifier?
I think it's important that, you know, first they put aside tonight as quickly as possible, because it's not relating to what their next opportunity is. You know, there might be a couple of areas that you'd want to address with a few individuals, but without it being overplayed, just subtle messages around, you know, not making those adjustments when you needed to, and then just bringing everyone together back into that positive frame of mind which they've had for 2 months.
Okay, and all of you can jump in on this. Into the final. Exactly 9 years after they were last in one. Is this the year after all for RCB? Dustin?
I'll say yes.
Varun?
I think it's going to be RCB's year. I mean, we say it every year when they qualify, but this year feels a bit different. They've broken too many jinxes not to win the IPL.
Tom?
It's theirs to lose.
All right, there you have it. You have the unanimous support of the panel as far as the favourites for the final go. RCB, big thank you to Tom, Moody and Varun. We'll see you back tomorrow for Eliminator Day. And Dustin, you will be here with us as well. Nice early finish. If you guys have plans, I advise you to get to them at the earliest possible juncture. We'll get to our plans and see you again for MI versus GT. Look forward to your company then for Nexa Presents ESPN Cricket for Timeout. And on our way out, why don't you once again witness our Fab 4 in our Nexa Presents ESPN Cricket for Crickcaster, where Ashwin Menon actually came in. Yeah, just tweaked his glasses, walked about the studio, in the office, and managed to have a chat in this studio itself with Abhinav Mukund. So make sure you catch that. It is live on our site now. Yep, that was Ashwin, Fab 4. They were in this office. We're going to reveal the results pretty soon. For now, we look forward to your company tomorrow. And for tonight, RCB fans, celebrate as hard as you can. You're in the final.
Ready for it.
Thrilled for it.
Presenting Franks with Turbo Booster Jet Engine.
Nexa.